Vystopia, the anguish of being vegan in a non-vegan world. Clare Mann, BSc Horns, MSc MA, Postgrad Deep Counts, CO, CCP Sci, Reg Sci, FP, PS, MAPS, vegan psychologist and communications trainer. Imagine everything you believe to be true suddenly shatters. Despite everyday challenges, you are fairly positive and believe in the whole. Life's an adventure and people are doing their best. You might hold social justice concerns about people and the environment, and when you share this, people champion your efforts. Then one day your life takes a 180-degree turn and you feel you are living in hell, made worse by the realization that 90% of people around you contribute to it through their everyday consumer choices. You feel you're in Aldous Huxley's dystopian world of darkness, cruelty, competition, totalitarianism, and greed. What happened to your world? Vystopia, the anguish of being vegan in a non-vegan world, explores the world of the vegan, whose choices are seen by many as ridiculous or self-righteous. Vystopia is the normal response at any feeling human being should have after discovering the nature and extent of society's systematized animal abuse. It's fueled by the trans-like collusion of non-vegans with a dystopian world they've not yet realized they are part of. Dystopia explores the key questions of our times, including how kind, gentle people stay sane and happy in a violent, non-vegan world, and should be weighed vitally, especially by those in leadership positions. Michael Clapper, MD, physician and author. Clare Mann, vegan psychologist, author and existential psychotherapist, not only validates the vegan's experience, but rejects medical labels, which claim such an anguish is abnormal. As a telling witness to Vystopia, she provides vegans with a language and toolbox to work through their anguish and unite with others to examine the biggest social justice challenge of our time, our relationship with the animal kingdom. Published by communicate13one.com. What people are seeing. Dystopia is a brilliant summary of the second-hand suffering endured by those with the courage to see the first-hand suffering of animals for what it is, institutionalized sadism on a global scale. We must wake up the world to its own cruelty, and this book offers the roadmap. Jane Valles Mitchell, author, journalist, JaneUnchained.com. Whether you live your life by vegan principle or you don't, given that plant-based diets have future-seeing implications for our personal health, world hunger, and the ecological stability of the planet, Clare Mann's powerful book, Vystopia, explores the key questions of our times, including how kind, gentle people stay sane and happy in a violent, non-vegan world, and should be read widely, especially by those in leadership positions. Michael Clapper, MD, physician, author. Clare helps vegans to feel unequivocally understood and validated, sharing insightful examples from her extensive and varied professional experience. Clare offers effective tools, techniques, and resources to empower and elevate vegans in a myriad of ways. Vystopia is essentially reading also for anyone wanting to break free and unchain themselves from society's mass lies, deception, and the trends of social programming, and to expand their mind and field of awareness to question everything and gain a better understanding of how humans, society, and the world works. Natasha and Luca, the vegan couple, social media influencers, vegan advocates, thatvegancouple.com. This could be the how-to book of the 21st century. Clare Mann has identified how those suffering because of their concern for animals who endure pain can transform their anguish into meaningful action for positive change and the path to a more compassionate, caring world. Lee Winan, Green Party Senator. This post is groundbreaking and explains the anguish someone feels when they learn about the ubiquitous use of animals. A fabulous tool to empower animal advocates to create a kinder world for animals. Glennie Hodges, Executive Director, Animals Australia. Most people think the most challenging thing about being vegan would be the food, but actually the food is easy and delicious. The hard part is realizing how much more unnecessary violence is being inflicted on innocent beings, and that when you tell people what most don't want to hear about, they definitely don't want to see it. Thankfully, Clare has put together a useful book to help us navigate through the challenges and find happiness as vegans in a not yet vegan world. James Aspe, Animal Rights Companions speaker. Vystopia is an essential read for vegan sustainability and survival. Clare Mann identifies many of the cultural landmines and that threaten our well-being as well as our activism and provides the insights we need to heal as well as thrive. As someone who receives pleas for help from lonely vegans in rural places, I am personally grateful to now have a book that I can recommend to them especially. For non-vegans, this book promises to illuminate the reality of the vegan living in a non-vegan world and dispel many of the misconceptions that may be preventing them from embracing veganism. Robert Guido, author, speaker, director of Free From Harm. Vystopia is a powerful and timely book, a must-read for everyone. Too many are totally unaware or deliberately ignore the immense suffering humans inflict on animals, while the majority still work in a trance, hypnotized by conscious reality. Clare steers people's conscious to begin this gentle yet powerful revolution. If you think this book is just for vegans, think again. Tao Dehas, social ecologist, clinical psychotherapist, speaker. A beautifully written, accessible, and extensively researched book that holds up a mirror to society's often conflicted and selective compassion. For those of us who are already vegan, this book provides much needed solace and inspiration. To those who have not yet made the journey, this book will challenge preconceptions in all inclusive, wise, and thoughtful way. Clare's book provides incontrovertible, rational, and sensitive guidelines for helping live in a world still dominated by carnism. I long to share this book with vegans, needing support and those who resist no longer contributing to the mass suffering of animals around the world. You, the reader, are in the most nurturing place with Vystopia. Highly recommend. Linda Stoner, CEO, Animal Liberation, NSY. A brilliant and accessible book that not only finally names the unique experience of vegans, but also provides practical tools and resources to help us cope and get others to understand how they are being duped into supporting cruel and unethical systems. Katrina Fox, journalist, author, founder of Vegan Business Media. Clare Mann not only masterfully describes the challenges animal advocates experience living in a non-vegan world, but also offers insights into navigating these challenges based on her extensive experience as a vegan psychologist, working directly with other vegans. I can't recommend this book highly enough. Casey Taft, PhD, D. Professor, Boston University School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry. Clare Mann, Christine intelligence and years of experience as a vegan. Clare Mann's Christine intelligence and years of experience as a vegan psychologist has produced an excellent resource for activists and their families and friends everywhere. How I wish I had this book, Vystopia, 40 years ago when I started my activism. Now it will be my constant companion. Importantly, I'd allow Ebb. I gave me two very strong emotions. One being extremely excited and energized to be a vegan animal activist, and two, inspiring hope knowing our journey to change the world for the better is well in progress. Patty Mark, Animal Liberation, Victoria. Vystopia is a fundamental weapon to add to the vegan warrior's arsenal for personal and social change. Not only does Clare pull back the curtain, revealing non-vegans the widespread corruption in the world directly contributing to the overwhelm and burnout in our vegan community, she also leaves us with tricks of the trade for strong, effective communication and tools for happy, compassionate living, an imperative step in creating the vegan utopia for which we all strive. Christopher August and Sarah Oakley, founders Vegan Warrior Academy and Soul in Wonder Inc. Vystopia is a modern masterpiece. Vegans will deeply relate to the content. Non-vegans will get a precise picture of what it is like to be a vegan in a non-vegan world. This book is a beacon of hope and has the potential to bring us all together with more understanding, empathy, and caring for each other, the animals, and the planet. Most read book of 2018. Kathy Devine, author, mentor, and publisher, founder of Australian Vegans Journal. Vystopia is a compelling read using powerful stories to convey the truth about what's going on behind closed doors. Meditators and non-vegan psychologists will also find it insightful and hopefully understand more about the suffering animals endure to produce our food and why vegans suffer so much anguish. Vegans will most certainly be comforted by the encouraging and positive psychology of how to live in a not yet vegan society. Christine Townend, founder of Animal Liberation Australia, founder of Animal Australia with Peter Singer. Vystopia perfectly describes the feeling of grief one experiences when discovering the systemized cruel treatment of animals. As I joined the animal rights movement, I realized that this trauma was very much shared among many activists. This book offers applicable solutions for living better lives ourselves and learning to be better animal advocates, using more strategic approaches and by developing more effective communication skills and the blueprint for a vegan world. Misha Masahi, L214 Éthique et Animaux, http://l214.com and Animal Testing, http://animaltesting.fr. Activists can be consumed and defeated by the honor of what's happening to animals at the hands of humans. Vystopia describes our plight and a way through our anguish to make the world question our dominion over the animal kingdom. Chris Delforce, director of Dominion and Lucent, www.dominionmovement.com, www.aussiefarms.org.au. Fear, anxiety, and despair can overcome nearly anyone, but vegans for whom the knowledge of how animals are abused and killed in our society can be traumatizing are often faced with this isolating experiences every day. With vystopia, we at last have a label to describe the deep emotional and psychological pain specific to the vegan community, and Clare Mann provides a framework for tackling this existential crisis. Written in direct, no-nonsense language, this book should be read not only by vegans, but by everyone who cares about them. Mark author of A Vegan Ethic, embracing a life of compassion toward all and striking at the roots, a practical guide to animal activism. The non-vegan world can be a debilitating reality for those who have seen and cannot unsee the animal suffering it entails. Clare Mann is a synthesis insights from her extensive experience working with vegans and through her own personal journey to bring this compelling and timely narrative that offers powerful strategies for the already vegan, while simultaneously opening doors to the vegan yet to be. Taya Brooks back, animal rights campaigners and independent scholar. Vystopia. Noun. One existential crisis experienced by vegans arising out of an awareness of the trans-like collision with a dystopian world. Two awareness of the greed, ubiquitous animal exploitation, and speciesism in a modern dystopia. Forward. Clare Mann's book is a timely addition to our body of knowledge of the human condition. Each day we see more starkly the grim effects on the human psyche of our growing sense of hopelessness, and some degree of existential angst. Mental health at long last is being taken seriously by health professionals and to their credit by governments. I am particularly sensitive to the emotional condition of a rapidly growing number of people who become vegans based on their ethical beliefs about animal cruelty. These intrepid souls bear the brunt of abuse, criticism, ostracization, and in many cases violence from those who choose to ignore, for their own self-service reasons, the screams coming from those well-concealed. Ghastly gulags of despair recall slaughterhouses, farms, or vivisection laboratories. In my own journey through Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, I have learned to see these vegans in a much more heroic light. I describe these vegans who are in fact animal rights activists as brave, quintessential first responders. Like firefighters who run into burning, high-rise buildings, citizens who swim out to rescue strangers, caught in a whip, ordinary Germans who hide terrified Jews from the encroaching Nazis. This current breed of vegan activists confronts a deeply entrenched statu quo of vested interest in sunset industries that are grimly clinging onto sick and outdated paradigms, shady politics, backroom deals, and Twitter culture. These activists are imprisoned in an equally insidious zeitgeist as those of their forebears. This one is funded and protected by cheaply bought politicians, greedy profiteers, and an economic marketplace where taste, fashion, and fad are merely data points and de rigueur. Where ethics come at point a low price in an economic system where cruelty is just another externality, another irrelevant factor cost in the Orwellian production process. But let us not despair. Our ranks are growing. and nature bats last. Of this we can be sure. A day will dawn when civilization will owe these brave first responders, the ethical vegans and thinkers like Clare Mann, a debt of gratitude it can never repay. And for my own part, I look forward with great joy to the inevitable dawning of that beautiful day. Philip Wallen, OAM, investment banker, philanthropist, kindest trust. Acknowledgement. I can possibly name everyone who has contributed directly or indirectly to the production of this book. This is particularly because it is the result of thousands of personal discussions and client interactions as well as inspiration from everyone involved in the vegan movement. The examples in this book, however, are based on my work with clients or interactions with friends and colleagues, as well as my personal experience as an ethical vegan. Oxymoron. I am eternally grateful for the lessons that they have taught me. I particularly want to thank my partner, Brendan Norris, for his unwavering commitment to challenge this dystopian world and create workable solutions to break us out of the trance. Sarah Kidd for encouraging me to develop the concept and direction of vystopia. My publicist, Christina Fox, whose commitment to veganism is unwavering. My copywriter, Mem Davis, for reading her early manuscripts, being creative on demand and ensuring I sleep. Demetrius Buckley for his marketing genius and big picture perspective. Special thanks to all the reviewers for their support and being the shoulders of giants upon which I am standing. Special thanks to Nadia Perry for the cover design and Tracy O'Keefe, Kathy Devine, Juan Prasad, Philip Wallen, that vegan couple Natasha and Luca, David Brooks, Teja Pribak Brooks, and numerous fellow Vixtopians who are the leaders in this not yet vegan world. Immense gratitude for my fellow Sydney Cube of truth animal rights campaigners who tirelessly campaign for the freedom of all animals. To Daz, Minka, and Topi for teaching me how to be present, not sweating the small stuff, and insisting on finding joy in a challenging world. Not only every cage is empty. Contents. Preface, page 1. Nearly a decade ago, after becoming vegan, I started speaking out for animal rights at conferences, festivals, and online. The more I spoke out, the more people asked for my advice as a psychologist on how to deal with the anguish they felt knowing about cruelty to animals. Vegans started asking their daughters to be referred to me for counseling. Many of them either refused to see non-vegan practitioners or said their pain was undermined when they were told that their depression or that the only way to recover was not judge the world so harshly. In the last 5 years, GPs have referred people to me they believe are suffering from eating disorders or self-harm. After meeting these individuals, I believe many of them are being wrongly diagnosed. Instead of having psychological illnesses, they demonstrate the normal reactions of any feeling human being after discovering the cover-up of industrialized animal abuse. Normal reactions. I am a telling witness to the anguish of knowing about the systemized abuse of animals in society. However, my training as both a psychologist and existential psychotherapist enabled me to work through my pain and transmute my despair into powerful action for change. I needed a name for what I believe in an existential despair and to find solutions for vegans whilst avoiding medicalization of the condition. Vystopia is a name I created to explain the vegan's experience, and this book provides a way for vegans to navigate their pain and become the necessary champions to create a more compassionate world. I believe it's my responsibility as an ethical vegan and health practitioner to speak out for what is right and encourage other professionals to do the same. How to use this book. Page 3. This book is written for the vegan who finds it difficult to get non-vegans to understand the depth of their anguish. Chapter 1, Lifting the Veil on the Truth, is an invitation to non-vegans to get a glimpse of the vegan's pain and the difficulty they have to explaining the complexity of their despair. After reading this chapter, the non-vegan will be more able to understand the philosophy of veganism and why the vegan is so passionate about it. Subsequent chapters provide the vegan with a language and rich examples to talk about their pain and explain how living in a non-vegan world causes them so much difficulty. Each chapter focuses on specific challenges like relationships with non-vegans, how their vystopia gets triggered, and why vegans become angry and anxious, constantly asking, what else don't we know? Vystopia, the anguish of being vegan in a non-vegan world, makes simply the ubiquitous nature of the vegan's anguish and shows why veganism is a moral baseline for our society. Chapter 6, Creating a World to Belong to provides practical solutions for vegans to work through their vystopia and become empowered to usher in a more compassionate world. Chapter 1, Lifting the Veil on the Truth, page 5. The truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may divide it, but in the end, there it is. Winston Churchill. When Edward Snowden, formerly both a CIA employee and contractor for the U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, revealed the truth about the covert and authorized global surveillance of people, he was quickly labeled a traitor, charged with espionage, and proclaimed a threat to U.S. security. The United States government claimed it was right in attempting to silence Snowden on the basis of national security. People less trusting of the government's intention saw a whistleblower who had revealed the erosion of privacy and the potential for such information to be used by less than scrupulous bureaucrats. Further, it sent a powerful message that the state has powers it will exercise to control those who dare challenge its actions, and the public rejoined them in believing it's in the interest of national security. More Snowden's disclosure, people were left questioning the real story. Most people will look no further than the mass media and believe the government is researching any abuses and will do the right thing by the people. Most people say things like, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. This statement assumes that government bodies are impartial, seeking only to protect the public. It also ignores the influence of industries fueled by the profit motive, with little concern for people or the environment. Little concern. Anyone who questions the integrity of the government in managing these forces is labeled as a conspiracy theorist, unpatriotic, or foolish. History is full of examples where corruption and greed prevail over the truth. A perfect example is asbestos, known since the 20s. How hazardous it is the people's health. Despite this, it is still the widespread use. What is the truth? How can the average individual make a choice about Snowden or any other disclosure of huge proportion if they don't have access to the full information? If mass surveillance is not considered a secret program, exactly why did it take a whistleblower to get us to question what is going on? We cannot make decisions based on many things we heard about in the media because we only receive information that is filtered down and understandable to the average person. If we had to research everything in our lives, we wouldn't get anything done. We have a blind trust that issues pertinent to our well-being are ethically and responsibly monitored by governments or professionals. When we hear about individuals who act less than ethically, we dismiss them as a bad apple, comfortable that the individual will be dealt with and processes put in place to avoid this. For example, the doctor who kills their elderly patients, the counselor who sleeps with a client, or the politicians who sell secrets to another country, or are all seen as individual wrongdoers as we selfishly believe institutions have systems in place to ensure the public's interest. Why it is that we blindly believe so much without asking more questions, particularly where it affects us personally? Good question. The power of social conditioning. Each of us is subject to conditioning from our families, cultures, workplace, and society as a whole. In the Western world, we are exposed to wider social influences as a function of the era in which we are born. Mowat et al. 2009 identified three distinct eras in society over the last 100 years that have been mirrored in our education and organizational systems. The values and messages of these eras are revealed in and reflect expectations and ways in which people communicate and influence other people effectively. 1. The area of obedience. Spare the rod and spoil the child. Formal education has been around since the early 18th and was built around a sense of obedience. The values were, if you don't do what you are told, you will be punished. There were little focus on developing children's abilities or acquiring knowledge. The focus was to control and get children to do as they were told. This was known as the era of obedience and mirrored a society that valued conformity and adherence to external rules or religious ideologies. 2. The area of reward. Do as you're told and your jobs for life. Around the end of the Second World War and the Great Depression of the last century, the notion of obedience began to break down because the world was changing and new knowledge and skills were required. Suddenly, the teaching of knowledge and content became important. With this came a different regime of set of values. Do as you are told and everything will work out. In this phase, children were encouraged to behave correctly, and if they didn't, they were punished. Corporal punishment was used to condition respect in children towards their elders. The message, if you do as you are told, you will get the result you need, suffused society and organizational life. For example, people believed if you work hard, you will have a job for life. Put money away and you will be safe in the future. Pay your taxes and the state will look after you. Invest in your superannuation and money will be there for you later. 3. The era of respect. Teachers and leaders are facilitators and change agents. We now live in an uncertain world with an unprecedented rate of change. We all know a few other baby boomers might prefer it were not the case, that there is no such a thing as a job for life, or a world that stands still. This is mirrored in changing attitudes toward systems and people who traditionally would have engendered respect purely because of their position. Today's doctors, politicians, managers, teachers, and religious leaders are Christians, and ready access to information through social media allows us to become informed and to Christian services that were once taken for granted. This puts the onus for performance and earning respect on the individual professional. No longer can they hide behind a wall or title that once demanded automatic respect. The whole sense of respect have shifted, and the youth of today work from the perspective of if you won't listen to me, why should I listen to you? Respect me and I'll respect you. In a transactional sense, the interaction comes down to who gives respect in the first instance. In the era of reward, respect your elders was a prevalent value. Today, age is no longer a criterion for respect. We are presently in transition with the majority of school, political, and organizational systems still preferring to use an era of reward model that is beginning to break down. As both formal and informal leaders embrace this collective era of respect, the potential for individual and collective collaboration is enhanced. Those who wish to retain control as experts who are above being questioned imply that people must listen to them. Many teen parent, organizational, and political conflicts occur because of this assumption of expertise. As a politician or CEO, I know best. As a parent, I know more than a teenager. As a professional, I know what to do. I sell this project and know what you need. Despite the growing influence of this era of respect and access to more information in issues of national security of where big profits are involved, we are still unable to access the full information, hence why whistleblowers are so important. We are also subject to the most fatal of our limitations, willful ignorance. Willful ignorance, the practice or act of intentional and blatant avoidance, disregard or disagreement with facts, empirical evidence, and well-founded arguments because they oppose or contradict one's existing personal beliefs. Many people are too overwhelmed, lazy, or indifferent to question things. For example, if we hear or read or report that tap water is bad for us, at face value we are unable to discern between someone informing us for our own health or the marketer set to profit from us switching to bottled water. In an increasing complex and information-rich world, we are conditioned to be willfully ignorant and consider issues only within a narrow bandwidth our interest. However, when we avoid matters that do influence us directly, the cost is greater. For example, the vast majority of people are willfully ignorant in relation to issues around education, healthcare, diet, and our natural environment. Ideas contrary to the norm are vehemently resisted, particularly thus that affect us directly, such as healthcare, lifestyle, and diet. This is until they become the new form. For example, many people resisted equality between the sexes, denying same-sex couples the right to marry. In 2017, the Australian public overwhelmingly agreed to recognize same-sex partnerships, paving the way to allow same-sex marriage to become legal. Many young people today don't understand their grandparents' resistance to same-sex marriage. Their elders have grown up in the era of respect, with most believing that there are more pressing issues to address. Many are unaware of the decades of campaigning for equal rights, whereas those active in it see how much society's views have changed over time. Shifts in collective thinking about health and well-being. In the last decade, there has been a tremendous increase in people adopting a vegetarian or vegan diet. In Britain alone, it is estimated that 542,000 people are now following a vegan diet, up from the last estimated of 150,000 people 10 years earlier. Following ridicule and resistance after the Second World War, for the last quarter of the 20th century in the West, most restaurants have served a vegetarian option. In the last decade, we have seen a massive increase in the uptake of veganism, and again those early adopters have been ridiculed or seen as a threat to normal behavior. For example, the promotional videos for the 2017-2018 Australia Day celebrations directly ridiculed vegans, pointing to their un-Australian behavior for not eating meat. Many people find it amusing to ridicule vegans because, like other socially shared experience, they experience it within an awareness of the increase of this lifestyle choice. For the average person, this is okay until your family member says they are becoming vegan. This is no doubt similar to public dialogue about same-sex relationships. The lens on this discussion changes dramatically when someone is confronted with having to consider it within their own family dynamic. The following example explores the impact of our individual reactions within a social context. Story of the abducted child. Over the years, I've heard the very unique stories of thousands of clients and examples of how everyone faces experiences where they either break down or break through. Many of those stories are harrowing, renewing my respect for people's potential to survive and break the cycle of abuse and despair. Everyone's story has affected me, but there is one I will never forget. It's about a young girl called Ellie. Ellie was abducted from her mother shortly after her birth. She was not the first baby Ellie's mother had lost, and despite how much she cried and protested, she was powerless to save her child. Ellie's mother no doubt knew the fate that her daughter would face, sexually abused and a baby machine for the abductors who would continue this cruel trafficking. Ellie, her mother, and sisters would never know the close bonds of family, and Ellie's pain was indescribable. The only crime Ellie had committed was her gender, and she was caught in a cycle of abuse with her reproductive system hijacked for profit. As I heard Ellie's story, I tried to imagine her pain and that of her mother. How would her mother have felt having carried Ellie for 9 months, given birth, and that robbed of the opportunity to protect her young? Nature had prepared her body to be there for a child, and her milk was ready to suckle her baby. The powerlessness, anguish, and agony she would have endured is unfathomable. Ellie, too young to make sense of the situation, would have reached for her mother, but be met with a barren environment, resulting in anxiety, fear, and trauma. Who is Ellie? Ellie was, in fact, a young calf taken from her mother at birth, so milk meant for her could be bottled and sold for human consumption. This is standard practice in any form of dairy farm. The mother cow must give birth in order to produce milk, and calves compete with the dairy industry for cow's milk, so are forcibly removed as quickly as possible within 12 or 24 hours of being born. Male or bobby calves are considered to the dairy industry's waste and are killed within a few days of birth, or if reared for veal, at 3 months old. Female calves continue the dairy industry's cycle of misery. Bobby calves are worth very little financially, although their byproducts, more lucrative than their meat, are exported overseas and often used for human baby food. Their fourth stomach is dried and used in the production of cheese, including parmesan. Other parts of their bodies are used for pharmaceutical products. A change in perspectives. What are your reactions to this story? Did your feelings change when you realized it was an animal abduction and not a human one? If this was the case, why do you think this was? For many people, their reaction changes and they feel less able to emphasize why the suffering of the cow was cow than a human. Why is it so? It's because we have a hidden belief that animals don't suffer in the same way as humans, or do we just not have enough capacity to extend our empathy beyond our own family, community, or species? Whatever our reaction, our interpretation of events is happening with an existing personal, social, and cultural value system. What else are we cutting ourselves off from that? With a different lens, we might see differently. Story of the Aboriginal baby. Attitudes and beliefs change over time, and what is acceptable by individuals, a community, or a whole society at one time is not acceptable at another. I recall a story told by a friend when I first came to Australia nearly 20 years ago that demonstrates this point. Geoff recalled that when he was a boy, his father told him a story about the racist treatment of Aboriginal people in Australia. Aboriginals are the indigenous people of Australia who were marginalized by the white settlers who invaded over 200 years ago. Many Aboriginals were killed in acts of genocide. Geoff's grandfather said that when he was a boy, his family had little money to entertain children. Toys were a luxury, particularly in this rural family. However, on several occasions, an Aboriginal baby was given to white children to amuse them. Geoff asked his grandfather what happened to the babies later. The reply was they were most likely drowned in a bucket. Whether these children were drowned or not, the reply reveals the abuse, racism, and slavery these children were born into because of the color of their skin. Most people are horrified when they hear this story, grateful that society's values have changed to stop such a racial influence. However, there was a time when this was seen as acceptable, at least to the white majority of 16th Australia. We see a similar diversion of our beliefs when apportioning greater protection to some animals than others. For example, the Gatimai festival in Nepal, which sacrificed animals on a mass scale every 5 years. After international pressure in 2017, the Gatimai Temple Trust converted the festival to a celebration of life, transforming a 300-year tradition of animal cruelty. Similarly, in 2017, Animals Australia uncovered the body meat trade, where tourists were unwittingly eating dogs they believed to be other animals. The Balinese government banned this practice, although many tourists don't bat an eyelid at eating other animals. Animals waste for food versus companion animals. History holds numerous examples of prejudiced treatment towards members of different species and races within their wider species of culture. The following story, which appeared on Facebook, was shared and commented on for its ability to break the trends and invites us to examine our own hidden prejudices. Example: mistaken identity. I am so horrified, angry, and feel sick. I have just passed a man violently hitting his dog with a stick. The dog was yelping in pain, covering away, but couldn't get free as we was tied to a fence. He had blood all over him, and the more he cried out, the angrier the man got and hit him harder. Then he started to kick him violently, and the dog was in agony. No one was doing anything. I was afraid of the man, but begged other people to do something, but they all locked out without saying anything. It drew a large crowd, but no one was doing anything. As I got nearer and the yelps became louder, I saw things more clearly. I realized it was a baby calf and not a dog. Thank goodness. It's okay, it's not a dog but a calf. What are your reactions to this story? How did you feel when you thought it was a dog? Did your feelings change when you learned that it was a calf? Whether you felt differently after realizing it was a farm animal, or you are equally disturbed with whatever animal it is, ask yourself, what is the difference? When we value people differently due to their membership or particular race, sex, or age, we call these prejudices racism, sexism, and ageism, respectively. When we hold different values about living beings because they are non-human, this is called speciesism. Another aspect of prejudicism is where we treat non-human animals from different categories inconsistently. The story of the dog and the calf highlights the different values we might hold for companion animal versus those farmed for food or over human use. Why do we hold these values, and how do they influence our consumer and lifestyle choices? Where do our values about eating come from? The majority of people in the world eat meat, and when it comes to eating animals, our perception is shaped largely, if not entirely, by our culture. From a young age, people learn which animals are considered edible, while others are seen as disgusting or inedible. Religion often dictates what animals are inappropriate and should not be eaten. Other decisions are based on tradition or social learning. The French habit of serving horse meat or snails is considered in other places as cruel or disgusting. It's rare for us to seriously question these differences beyond intrigue of or interesting talking points where visiting different cultures. Bringing our values to the dinner table. We often assume that only vegetarians and vegans bring their values to the dinner table. People may ask people why they are vegetarian and what they want it and accommodate them accordingly. However, when someone says they are vegan, often a huge resistance occurs. The host may not know what to cook or feels the person is being overfussy or even judgmental about their own food choices. However, it's not only vegans that display their values with their food choices. Most meat eaters eat pigs or cows but not dogs, and this is purely because they have a belief system when it comes to eating animals. As Melanie Joy says, when eating animals is not a necessity, which is the case for many people in the world today, then it is a choice, and choices always stem from beliefs. The belief system about eating animals is called carnism. Why don't we ask more questions? In the same way that we don't have the inclination, time, expertise, or concern to ask how mass surveillance affects us personally, we resist finding out about how our food is really produced and what happens to the living animals before they grace our plates. There can be a number of reasons for this willful ignorance. Fear of discovering information that will cause us anxiety, resistance to our worldview being challenged, confusion as to what is true as people with different beliefs debate the issues, fear that what we discover will cause us to change our habits and lifestyle, fear that others will judge us whether we find out and make change or choose not to. By refusing to ask questions, we allow others to choose for us. When it comes to what we eat, those others are part of a billion-dollar industry that work very hard to keep the truth from us. Carnism is a violent belief system. Meat cannot be produced without killing animals, and in an attempt to maximize profits, animals are industrialized. Food production suffers the most violent treatment. Animal welfare standards are minimized as animals farmed for food are as considered property and don't share the same animal protection we offered our pets. The intensive conditions animals are kept in cause disease and the high use of antibiotics or other chemicals cause harm to human health. Intensive farming practices also create starvation in certain parts of the world, as land that could be used to grow food for humans is instead used to grow food for farmed animals. According to the United Nations, animal agriculture is one of the most significant contributors to the most serious environmental problems facing the world today, including climate change, deforestation, and freshwater depletion. Further, the World Health Organization estimated that 80% of our Western illnesses are caused by lifestyle choices. Isn't it time we started to do some more research and seek the truth about something so personal as our diet? If you don't ask questions about where our food comes from, we leave ourselves and others vulnerable to more hidden abuses, the cost of which may not be known for some time. When that cost comes, it will be too great to bear, and the damage will have already been done. In the same way that Snowden revealed the truth of unauthorized mass surveillance of citizens around the world, so does the message of veganism highlight the truth of how animal agriculture industries are inherently cruel with damaging effects on our environment and health. Why are vegans so passionate about their beliefs? Why can't the vegan just get on with their choices and let others do the same? Why do they feel compelled to change over people? A person who becomes a vegan is displaying values well beyond what they put into their mouth. A vegan is not the same as someone who adopts a plant-based diet. Every choice a vegan makes is underpinned by a central belief that it is wrong to use and exploit animals. Thus, they take direct steps to avoid anything that causes animal harm, including what they eat, wear, products and they use, entertainment, and consumer goods they choose, and investments and they make. So vegan has looked deeply into what happens to animals in the industrialized process and made choices not to allow their consumer choices to finance these cruel industries. They feel compelled to end the abuses and yet are often ridiculed as difficult conspiracy theorists or judgmental and bossy. The mental anguish of being vegan in a non-vegan world. If you know a vegan who just can't get on with their own life and feel distressed that others, particularly those close to them, aren't vegan, it's because they are suffering from a deep existential anguish known as vystopia. Vystopia, the existential crisis experienced by vegans arising out an awareness of the trans-like collision with a dystopian world and the awareness of the greed, ubiquitous animal exploitation and speciesism in a modern dystopia. What if these vegans are empowering us to question our world and take more responsibility for our choices and what we allow others to do behind closed doors? If this is the case, then perhaps it's time to enter the vegan's world and find out why they find it so difficult to live in a non-vegan world. Chapter 2, Living as a Stranger in a Strange Land. Page 21. When you get a new worldview, you get a new world. It's like the shift from medieval Christianity to the new Renaissance and the Enlightenment. Barbara Marx Hubbard. Waking up in a foreign country. Imagine waking up in a foreign country. You are not sure how to go there, but you wake up and everything is different. The word signs don't mean anything, and the shops in the street are only recognizable by what they have in the windows. Other people go merrily on their way, speaking in a language you don't understand, and they don't seem to notice your discomfort. Everything's familiar is one way, and yet it's like being on another planet. You don't know what to do, so you try to find someone who speaks your language. People either laugh at your accent and desperate attempts to be understood, or laugh at your clothes, hairstyle, or outdated phone. Then you remember your phone and are relieved because Google's your friend white. Google is your friend. The battery is flat and your charger doesn't fit in the wall plug. Now you start to get really scared. You try to buy food by pointing to what you want, but the shop assistant doesn't accept the money you have in your purse. If you've ever visited overseas, you may have felt disoriented, but you can live with it because you've chosen to go on an adventure. You have your phone, a direct line to friends on social media, and most people speak English anyway. But imagine not being a traveler, nor on holiday. In a split second, you're panic thinking, oh my god, what if I will never get out of this? If this happened to you, what would you feel it's likely to be? Isolation, fear, panic, despair, anxiety, desperation. And as time goes on and you're afraid you'll never see your friends and family again, your panic would increase. One day you will recognize someone and rush up to them saying, thank God, only to be shrugged off and hear, what's your problem? Do I know you? Now your despair would turn to grief, loss, and a fear you've never felt before. So isolation and panic would be unbearable. The more you try to get people to understand you, the worse it would become as they become angry, telling you never to speak to them again. What has happened to your world? If you can imagine this, you'll catch a glimpse of what it's like for someone who's become vegan, because for them the world they know has become a lion. If you're a vegan, this experience is probably very relatable. You don't have to imagine it because you've experienced a very similar thing, possibly on a daily basis. You may be experiencing it right now, and you feel this level of despair because you have discovered the enormous level of animal cruelty involved in the production of food, clothing, entertainment, cosmetic testing, household products, and more. This experience is not the same for someone who is on a plant-based diet. Whilst they might be laughed at our fussy eating, they are not continually traumatized by the animal abuse that silently underpins our everyday lifestyle. They may not recognize other people's collusion with an refusal to talk about these issues. Every day now you struggle with the pain of knowing what happens to animals. Perhaps your world before was okay, with the normal ups and downs. So one day your eyes were opened and everything changed. You no longer see meat on the plate, but a living creature begin for its life, or fish. Milk and cheese bring up violent images of a mother cow bashing her head against a crate, desperately trying to reach for her newborn calf, stolen for human milk consumption. The leather couch, which was comfortable before, is the skin of an animal, and every time you see the hand wash in the bathroom at work, you hear rabbits squishing from the testing on their eyes. The horror story continues and gets worse when other people dismiss, undermine, or laugh at your sensitivity, saying, surely it can't be that bad. The government would never allow it. Emigrating to another country. Very few of us would ever experience living in a different country with no contact with the outside world, but we can probably imagine it. However, a lot of people immigrate or go to live in a different part of their own country. Imagine doing this, but your friends and family refuse to visit. You tell them it's like paradise. The weather is better, the air is cleaner, and the lifestyle healthier. They make excuses for not visiting, and if you push them too hard, they say, "It's not all it's cracked up to be." You will realize that one day and want to come back. You tell them you used to feel this until you moved. Still they refuse, say it wouldn't work for them and that they are too old to change. You tell them that by staying where they were born, they are actually adding to the destruction of the planet, and behind closed doors, a lot of suffering goes into supporting the lifestyle. Now they get angry, refuse to discuss any aspect of your new life, and ban you from talking about it when you see them. A lot of people who have physically moved experience something very similar. Perhaps this is because when you leave you're saying somewhere else is better, even if you've moved for work or practical reasons. The silent message is that what you have left behind is not as good as what you have now, or else you would return. This means that our choice to stay is not the best one, and people resist this. As vegans, we experience something very similar when we tell our family and friends that we've become vegan. Despite the evidence of the health, environmental, animal welfare, economic, and spiritual benefits of being vegan, people still resist and many refuse to even visit our world. That is why many vegans end up feeling so lost, alone, angry, misunderstood, and often suffer from a range of mental health issues including anxiety, depression, grief, and suicidal thoughts. Feeling at home again. Can a vegan ever feel at home again living in a non-vegan world? My experience of working with the psychological trauma of vegans navigating this strange land is that it's possible to create greater ease and enjoyment living alongside a non-vegan world. Vegans will never accept or be neutral to what happens to animals behind closed doors. Oh no. But we can find a way out of our anxiety, grief, isolation, and despair. In fact, we must, if we are to change the plight of animals and play our part in creating a more compassionate world for animals, people, and the environment. People who migrate or move to a different part of the country typically do things that ease their sense of isolation and disorientation they usually create regular routines like visiting the same coffee shop or gym. Work out directions so key places become familiar and know where they are. Get to know the locals by speaking to the barista, local shopkeeper, or bus driver. Find people they have things in common with through group activities such as night classes or sports clubs. Ask locals about key places of interest they should visit. The analogy of immigrating or moving to an unfamiliar place can be helpful to us as vegans if we are to survive and create a sense of stability, belonging, and connection with like-minded people. Vegans who don't make connections with people who truly understand them and avoid addressing their own pain risk becoming anxious, depressed, or suffering from more chronic forms of mental illness. Understanding the psychology of vystopia. It's not only vegans who emphasize deeply with the suffering of others. Many non-vegans are deeply distressed by social injustice like child slavery, treatment of refugees, and economic inequities which leave people of poorer nations without the basics of food, healthcare, and shelter. Many people might feel that the vegan's symptoms of distress must be similar to other forms of personal distress at a whole range of life challenges. So why do vegans say they only really feel understood by other vegans or are often only willing to seek professional help from those who are also vegan. Why do so many vegans feel that non-vegan professionals are unable to fully help them when the labels given to their experience are recognizable by and the same as non-vegans such as depression, anxiety, and grief? Personal insight from a vegan psychologist. For over 25 years, I have worked as a psychologist in organizations, private practice, and in a voluntary capacity. I have witnessed human suffering from a wide variety of causes with symptoms including anxiety, depression, grief, relationship problems, self-harm, and mood disorders. Whatever their presenting symptoms, my job is to help people identify the source of their distress so they can go on to find better ways to live more productive lives. Like so many vegans, my own journey started with me becoming vegetarian. Graphic footage from Animals Australia about the factory farming of pigs resulted in me becoming an ethical vegan. After seeing the treatment of pigs in intensive farming, I asked, why didn't I know this? My anger and distress at what I had learned led me to look further and to become very outspoken as an animal rights companion. More and more vegans thought my services as a psychologist, saying they only felt comfortable with a vegan who they felt understood their anguish. Through these sessions, a pattern has emerged as to the nature and enormity of the typical vegan's distress. For almost every vegan who came to see me, their symptoms were very related to their eyes being opened, to the systemized cruelty towards animals in our society. Their distress was compounded when they started to tell their friends and family, whom they were sure would be equally upset by it. Instead, many people responded with ridicule, criticism, and anger, saying that everyone has the right to choose what to eat. These feelings of frustration and powerlessness then often turned to complicated grief as they were unable to reconcile competing beliefs that the people they loved were capable of turning their eyes away from the suffering their consumer choices were financing. The typical symptoms they reported included complicated grief, mental anguish, depression, anxiety, self-medication, anger and despair, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, hopelessness, loneliness, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, the burden of knowing. Like many who have made the journey before me, the discovery of systemized torture and cruelty to animals within our modern society left me horrified. I experienced similar symptoms to those of my vegan clients. Did this mean I was mentally ill, or were my responses an understandable and necessary response to the horror of the cover-up I had discovered? I believe it is the latter. My journey into veganism arose from my eyes being so suddenly opened to the large-scale abuse of animals in our industrial system. It was almost impossible to take in, and undeniably one of the most painful things I have ever experienced. The realization that approximately 56 billion animals per year are killed for a mere 7.5 billion humans was happening. These animals are merely cogs in the machinery of business who consider them no more than units of production and profits. The reality I faced was indeed a dystopia, namely an imagined place or state in which everything is unpleasant or bad, typically a totalitarian or our environmentally degraded one. Wikipedia. However, as far as industrial abuse of animals is concerned, this wasn't an imagined situation. It was reality, and yet the majority of society were colluding with the dystopia through the everyday consumer choices. The more I searched, the more despairing I became. Within this was the other reality that encouraged people not to collude with the exploitation of animals, was often met with ridicule, resistance, with criticism or indifference. Cries of "it's my choice to eat what I want" made my heart sink, realizing that for those who said this were in a trance-like state, with no idea of the enormity they were a part of. I couldn't escape the frequent reminders of this speciesism, and as I saw others eat animals or their secretions, where animals sit on furniture made of animal skins, use cosmetics and household products that contain animal products or were tested on them. This collective complicity with the abuse was so startling that I felt there was no escape. It wasn't as if the pursuit of profit at any cost could be avoided by visiting or purchasing elsewhere. Even if I chose to purchase and act differently, others around me were continuing to support this dystopia. It was right in front of my eyes, and non-vegans were seemingly unaware of the depth of the deception. After hundreds of hours of one-to-one sessions with vegans around the world, and further hearing about vegans' experiences at the numerous vegan events I continue to be part of, I came to believe that the vegan's pain is unique to being vegan and warrants a specific definition. I decided that it is imperative that vegans do not become labeled as mentally ill or chronically dysfunctional, for which the only solution is medication. As a fellow sufferer of the burden of knowing, I wanted to create a term to validate the enormity of our experience and to avoid medicalizing our plight. Only second the vegan's experience be examined from a human perspective and solutions be found to help us. Only they can become part of the rising tide of social action. They say human superiority and animal abuse is unacceptable. I believe that if this experience and associated symptoms are existential in nature, I call this existential experience vystopia. May 2017. Client example. When Rachel came to see me, the depth of her despair was clear from how she walked, hung her head low, and spoke about her guilt and hatred of the human race. She and her partner became vegan on the spot after listening to two prominent animal rights campaigners speak about the reality of animal factory farming. She was so horrified by what she learned that she entered a deep depression, fueled partly by guilt she felt for financing this industry for so long, and hatred for humans capable of abusing animals for personal profit. Her depression escalated along with the negative thoughts and nightmares of the videos she had seen. In order to heal, she had to work through the depth of her grief, anger, guilt, and despair and forgive herself by realizing what industries perpetrating such atrocities work very hard to keep this from us. Keep this from us. She accepted she had no ignored the facts. They were deliberately hidden from her. Deliberately. Client example continued. By forgiving herself and adopting effective self-care strategies to sustain her weight, she shared veganism with others. She channeled her anger into positive action for animals. She applied her skills of research and writing to educate others, whilst developing compassion for those who had been equally duped. Today she is a powerful animal advocate, determined to be part of the solution. She knows her everyday actions enable her to turn a vystopia into creating a better world for animals. Dystopia and existentialism. The existential crisis experienced by vegans arising out of an awareness of the trans-like collision with a dystopian world and the awareness of the great, ubiquitous animal exploitation and speciesism in a modern dystopia. An in-depth definition of the philosophy of existentialism is outside the remit of this book, but in short, existentialism explains the angst a person feels when their eyes are opened to the non-objective nature of reality. For example, when a person experiences other cultures, they are forced to accept that social constructs like family relationships, religion, and social practices differ based on the collective ways in which people have chosen to view them. This hangs a person feels when they realize their reality and their world is not fixed results in a number of reactions. They can either deny the uncertain nature of reality and try to fix it with entrenched values, religious beliefs of bigotry, or live more emphatically, knowing that we are all within co-creating systems of meaning-making. Existential philosophy can be difficult to grasp, but offers a radically different perspective on who we are as individuals. In The Myth of Life and the Choices We Have, Mann, 2005, existential concepts of freedom, choice, responsibility, and anxiety are explained in a straightforward manner. You can access a free copy of this book together with over 50 practical activities via http://lifemyth.com. Having a deeper understanding of existential concepts can be helpful, but is not essential to understanding vystopia. Symptoms of vystopia. Many of my clients, in addition to the symptoms they reported above experience feelings of alienation from non-vegans. Many vegans report feeling unable to relate to non-vegans. Even if they kept friendships with non-vegans, there was a reduction in intimacy, feeling that if their friends really understood the issues and therefore them, they would have to be vegan. Misanthropy. Misanthropy is a general hatred, dislike, distrust, or contempt of the human species or human nature. Wikipedia. Some vegans are unable to reconcile competing feelings that their non-vegan friends and family are decent people, yet either refuse to hear about where their food came from, or know and still choose to consume animals. These powerful feelings are then directed outwards toward people in general, with a hatred and disgust for what they see as a selfishness and collusion with animal cruelty, for nothing more inconsequential than tradition, taste buds, or convenience. Guilt over past consumption of animals. Many vegans report feeling a sense of guilt over eating animals before they became vegan. Some, particularly those who have personally seen inside the slaughterhouse or testing laboratory, feel compelled to watch every video about animal cruelty, saying my pain is nothing compared to theirs. One client reported that the painkiller wore off during root canal surgery and the pain was excruciating. However, she didn't complain, saying to herself, this pain is minor to what animals suffer in the abattoir. What right have I to complain? She also went on to have the number 269 branded on her body with a hot branding iron. This marked the symbolic nature of a calf numbered 269 rescued in 2013 by anonymous activists days before his planned slaughter. For this client, the statute 269 was a reminder of the ownership and abuse of farmed animals worldwide. Guilt that they are not doing enough to save animals. Many vegans feel guilty that their efforts to right human wrongs are inadequate, despite spending an enormous amount of time advocating for animals, often at the detriment of their own health and well-being. They feel they are never doing enough to save the animals. This leads them to develop even deeper feelings of inadequacy, guilt and self-blame, resulting for many in self-harm, depression and despair. Inability to enjoy normal aspects of life. Vegans report that experiences that they previously found enjoyable and which enriched their lives lost meaning upon becoming vegan. Family celebrations, holidays, sport and culture seem trivial to many vegans. From their perspective, as long as animals are suffering, time spent away from trying to relieve their suffering is both an indulgence and waste. Frustration with non-vegans who don't ask more questions. Many vegans feel even more angst beyond telling most people about the industrialized cruelty of animals. Not only are they frustrated that many people don't believe them or refuse to change, their agony over people's lack of questioning that other things could be happening in the world which they are unaware of. The vegan implores the non-vegan to ask more questions, saying, if you are not aware of the cover-up of animal suffering on such a grand scale, what else could be going on? Don't you want to know more? Anger with the burden of knowing. It's normal for many vegans to report feeling utterly miserable about their lives, other people, and everything they have previously looked forward to. They resent the burden of knowing, saying things like, I wish I didn't know what I know now. I now know. I have never been so unhappy. Some vegans choose to compromise their values by becoming vegetarian. This is done to try and minimize the pain of alienation from families and friends who find this is more acceptable choice. However, guilt overcomes them and they report feeling more able to live with the alienation than the guilt of buying into the cruelty. Powerless when health professionals tell you it's normal. Some vegans report that they feel even more traumatized after confiding in their doctors. They say that their doctors have said it's normal to eat animals. Meat and dairy are an important part of a healthy diet. The anguish these vegans feel is then intensified as they tell their doctor about the horror of what happens to animals in food production. When this is met with disbelief or being implored not to worry about these issues, the vegan feels powerless to respond. On the one hand, they want to support and yet they see the doctor as part of the problem. Some vegans have reported that non-vegan counselors and psychologists tell them that their anxiety will only be relieved if they stop focusing on animal cruelty. In a handful of cases, vegans report counselors becoming highly resistant when told everyone should become vegan, with personal reactions of, "You can't tell me what to do." Counselors are trained not to do this. I believe this breaking of professional boundaries probably highlights the counselor being triggered by the implications for them of the material being shared. Consistent frustrations. All of the vegan clients I saw and continue to see report the following. Disbelief that at the size and extent of the systematized cruelty on a global level, much of which happens behind closed doors. Frustration that people don't wake up and ask questions about where their food comes from. Anger and rage when people refuse to listen to the reasons they are vegan. Such willful ignorance only fuels their misanthropy. Grief and despair that they will never see a vegan world in their lifetime and animals will continue to suffer. Client example. Catherine struggled every day with the anguish of knowing what happens to animals behind closed doors. She believes that her actions would never be enough to end their plight, to entitle her to any pleasure in life. Things she previously found enjoyable became trivial, and enjoying a meal, watching a movie, or going to the beach were seen as indulgences. She said, "How can I justify having any pleasure knowing that animals suffer so much?" She felt guilty all the time, and her advocacy took her to places few dare to imagine, often risking her life to capture footage of cruel practices in abattoirs, animal testing laboratories, and animal sports. Her vystopia was so deep she spiraled into a dark place, eating junk food, drinking too much alcohol, and smoking, all forms of self-medication to assuage her pain. She realized she needed to help after sleeping in her cloth and chose for a week to ensure she could attend animal vigils at short notice. Client example continued. By sharing her grief and pain and realizing she risked not being able to advocate at all if her health failed, she started to make changes to her life. She still struggles to accept the good in people, but has learned to be kinder to herself, knowing that resourcing herself enables her to be a voice for the voiceless. Depression appears to develop in vegans I have seen who wish to return to the blissful state of willful ignorance. They report that they would happily return to this state, but know they never can as long as animals are suffering. They know that the animals will continue to suffer if they abandon the burden of knowing and not take action to end their plight. As a result, their mortal anguish continues with periodic respite as they hear about the growth of veganism and small wins of reduced animal suffering. A telling witness to the client's plight. Over the years of practicing as a psychologist, I have been able to empathize with many of my clients' experiences. Some experiences are outside my own, such as when working with victims of homicide, substance abuse, or torture. Even in those circumstances, I have been able to apply my training and experience as a human being to come alongside those people and enter their worlds. However, in hearing the stories of my vegan clients' experience, their words echo my own grief and mental anguish of knowing about the systemized animal abuse. I believe my own anguish, like this, is a perfectly acceptable and necessary human response. People should be outraged and pained when they discover the enormous industrial cover-up in society and complacency people have with this systemized cruelty. This view is similarly expressed by numerous vegan health professionals I have spoken with, including Dr. Michael Klepper of the groundbreaking documentary What's Health. Instead, until a person's eyes are opened, vegans are seen by many as judgmental and oversensitive people who are telling others how to live their lives. My own training and personal therapy equip me with the capacity and resources to navigate this difficult territory. However, the anguish I feel is not something I can totally overcome because of. Everyday reminder of the non-vegan's collusion with industrialized cruelty, though their consumer choices, my desire to end the cruelty and usher in a vegan world, so people are no longer part of a hidden system of abuse that tortures animals and destroys the planet, along with the physical and spiritual health of human beings. The shared experience of vystopia. Existential theory highlights the personal journeys we all experience in discovery of creating meaning in our lives. I believe the overarching reality of vystopia inhibits vegans adopting more individual forms of distraction or meaning making. Instead, vystopia becomes a reality shared amongst vegans who can't escape everyday reminders of the dystopian world and society's unwitting collusion with animal cruelty. Apart from individuals who deliberately choose to abuse animals, most non-vegans unwittingly collude with cruelty until the vegan advises them of it. Imagine the vegan talks to a person about these issues, and yet they don't become vegan. This leads the vegan to believe that the other person either agrees with the cruelty, disbelieves that what is happening, or is indifferent to it. Either way, the vegan knows that the non-vegan now has the knowledge but chooses to continue with the collusion. This is why so many vegans say that their friends or family don't understand them. It's because they believe non-vegans demonstrate that cruelty and animal exploitation is acceptable, or they do not wish to are unable to empathize with the vegan's trauma, or they do not believe that animal cruelty is as far-reaching as the vegan reports. The vegan is continually faced with living as a stranger in a strange land, looking for ways to get non-vegans to see the truth. Their pain is so great that they find it hard to marshal their thoughts and communicate effectively. This leads to shame, blame, powerlessness, and misanthropy. Only by working through their own grief, extending their compassion to humans duped by the social trends, and becoming influential communicators, they can learn to live with vystopia. Misdiagnosis of the vegan condition. In the past few years, doctors have referred patients to me they believe have mental health symptoms of eating disorders and self-harm. It is my opinion that vegans referred to me with these symptoms do not suffer from traditional eating or self-harm disorders. My past experience working in a psychiatric teaching hospital in the UK revealed that clients with these conditions are often deeply unaware of the reasons influencing their symptoms. Their symptoms become an outward sign of hidden or unconscious distress which is too painful to confront directly. The vegans said to me are deeply distressed and say it's because of the horror they've witnessed or now know about the animal industries. I discovered that vegan clients diagnosed as having self-harm tendencies report regularly viewing graphic videos of animal abuse, which they say is because they feel guilt if they don't know about all aspects of the animal suffering. It's only by knowing all the details that they can be informed and act to change it. Vegan clients who have told their doctors they can eat around people who are consuming animals are referred as having eating disorders. This is despite not having any of the typical medical symptoms of eating disorders. Whilst it is possible for vegans, like anyone else, to suffer from eating disorders or self-harm, I believe that many clients have been misdiagnosed. For many, their symptoms are indicative of a normal, feeling human way of dealing with vystopia. The extent of vystopia being animal cruelty. One of the symptoms vegans present with influenced the definition of vystopia, namely the trance-like collusion with a dystopian world. Many people prior to and some after becoming vegan are very concerned about wider social justice and environmental issues and tend, but not necessarily, to have left-wing political views. They are very concerned about the power of the corporations to influence government and pursue profit without responsibility. They see the detrimental effects of corporate and individual greed on the suffering of people and the environment. Upon becoming vegan, they are forced to consider that there was an enormous secret that was held from them: unwitting consumer collaboration with systemized animal cruelty. They are forced to answer the question, what else don't I know? Is the unbridled greed and corruption. Corruption by institutions we believe have our best interests at heart that reveals a dystopian world. An example of this is the corporate sponsorship of health advisory bodies in the USA revealed in documentaries such as What Health. In the book CSIRO Perfidy, the truth about CSIRO's best-selling scientifically proven diet and its cancer-causing central ingredient, Russell 2009. Similar corruption is highlighted in Australia. The reader context within which animal cruelty occurs is explored in greater detail in Chapter 5. In the next chapter, we examine the ubiquitous nature of vystopia and how it is triggered every day for a vegan. Page 41, Chapter 3, Living in a World That Doesn't Seem to Care. When the suffering of another creature causes you to feel pain, Do not submit to the initial desire to flee from the suffering one, but on the contrary, come closer, as close as you can to him who suffers, and try to help him. Leo Tolstoy. Question. How do you know someone is a vegan? Answer. They'll tell you. Why are vegans so difficult, especially when other people go out of their way to cater to their dietary choices? When someone has made a lot of effort to accommodate the vegan, why are so many vegans unhappy and wouldn't get on with their meal and leave others to theirs? Are they just zealots who want everyone to change and be like them? Are they so intolerant of other people's choices that they can't let things waste and have to make a big deal about things? Have they joined a vegan mafia and become so radicalized that they want everyone to think and feel how they do? Aren't they just selfish, wanting it all to be about them? Why can't they just leave people to their own choices? Vegetarians are so much nicer than vegans. Most vegetarians and those on a plant-based diet seem perfectly at ease around others without having to convert them. Vegans, on the other hand, just can keep quiet about what other people are doing. Like many vegans, I was a vegetarian and for years was perfectly comfortable eating around others as long as there were a suitable meal option. Despite no longer eating meat since the late 70s, since discovering what happened in abattoirs, I didn't look further at this stage. When I removed dairy from my diet because of an eczema reaction, no one questioned my choices, nor did I feel the need to implore them to do the same. What changed when I became vegan? Suddenly I was no longer comfortable being around people eating any animal products, and then it goes worse. With a strong visceral reaction to any situation where I encountered animal use. Did I become an intolerant, opinionated individual wanted the world to follow, or did something else happen to me? If you are a vegan within this, you probably understand. I know vegans who have been reduced to tears at the arrival of the family roast dinner and called selfish and difficult because they spoiled the dinner for everyone else. All of these vegans, including myself, want to scream out, "It's not about me." So if it's not about the vegan's choice or desire to control others, what is the problem? The vegan's dilemma. It is only possible to understand what seems on the surface an unreasonable response if we look at what is really means to be vegan. Veganism is a philosophy of the non-use and non-exploitation of animals. It infuses every aspect of a vegan's life because of the ubiquitous nature of animal abuse in our society. Example of how far-reaching this will be explained later in this chapter when we explore the typical triggers that upset the vegan. The vegetarian or person on a plant-based diet may be totally unaware, willfully ignorant, believe a vegan diet is extreme or nutritionally deficient, or insufficiently concerned about animal use to become vegan. Interestingly, some vegans may like the taste of animal products, but would never knowingly engage in any action that would cause animal harm. Their understandable response of the non-vegan who hasn't yet made the emotional or ethical connection with animal abuse is to say things like,